Welcome to Intersec Pulse, part of Intersec Global and powered by Fire Middle East magazine. I'm delighted to be here in the studio and joined by Morgan Advanced Materials. We're going to find out a little bit more from two of their leaders, not just here in the region, but globally. We've got Holt, who is the Global Application Manager for Fire Protection, and we've got Amar, who is the Sales Manager here in the Middle East region. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here in the studio.
It's a pleasure.
Amar, first of all, obviously we are here in Dubai at Intersec Global as someone who represents Morgan in the Middle East. Can you talk to our audience a little bit more about Morgan's position here in the market and, also what we can expect from you in years to come?
Great. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. Morgan Advanced Material is a UK-based company. It's 167 years old company. We both come from the thermoceramics product division, which focuses more on high temperature insulation applications and heat containment solutions there. So we are spread across all over the world, having manufacturing facilities all across the regions there. And also in Abu Dhabi, we have our fiber manufacturing plant catering to the Middle East market and also to the global markets there.
Thank you very much, Amar. And Ian, if I can just ask possibly quite a broad question for yourself, why is it so important to insulate ducts?
The first starting point here is that this is not new. It's in almost all national building codes globally that ducts should be insulated. Ducts essentially form a superhighway for the passage of fire and smoke through buildings. And although there is a myth that smoke is not hot, that is not true. Smoke is essentially a liquid gaseous layer that travels through ducts. You therefore get a lot of radiant and conductive heat, which can cause ignition of other surfaces and surfaces within the building, which in turn result in fire spreading more than the original compartment. And as I say, all the building codes basically say that where a duct is passing through a compartment, it should have the same fire resistance level or greater than the compartment itself. And the compartments in the building code are 2 hours with insulation. Therefore, the duct should be 2 hours with insulation. So all you're actually doing is complying with building regulations. Wherever you go in the world, almost all countries have this. But essentially, it's really about prevention of fire spread through radiation and conduction.
Fantastic. And what are the key challenges that you tend to encounter when you're deploying your solutions from Morgan Advanced?
In the Middle East, it's essentially one of space constraints. There are very strict requirements from clients who are developing these properties to maximize, obviously, the selling space that they have. And when you've got a system that, because it's an insulated system, it takes up more space, that is an issue. And also you have the longer term, where they've been so used to putting a standard galvanized steel duct in, for example, with nothing around there. Now it's training them in an entirely different skill set.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And moving on probably to more of a regional aspect then, Amar, this is probably relevant to you, and then Ian, afterwards we can talk globally, but what are the key vertical sectors that you really prioritize and do a lot of work in?
In Middle East, the priority sector for us is on the building and construction fire protection, and also on the offshore marine applications there, because in building and constructions, we see a lot of development happening across UAE and also on the Middle East regions, with a lot of big projects coming up, or like a FIFA coming up in Saudi Arabia. And at the same time, we also see a lot of, multi-complexes coming up, which have got both the residential and the entertainment complex, which requires a proper fire safety products there. So like what Ian mentioned, the ducts are super highway for smoke and the fire to pass through the across all the entire building structures there. So in our case, the first priority is on the building and construction duct fire protections. When we say fire protection, we talk about passive fire protections. Our product is being used there to ensure that there is no fire to start with, and at the same time, when there is a fire, the duct needs to be staying there for 1 hour or 2 hours, depending on the regulation, what is required, so that the smoke is going out and the duct is not collapsing and there is no secondary fire that is happening on the services, what is going next to that. The other big market, what we are looking at is the offshore and marine application markets. There's a lot of construction of offshore platforms happens in Abu Dhabi with the projects coming up, ADNOC, Aramco, and Qatar Gas there. So there is a lot of good construction happening in Abu Dhabi, and all these platforms have to have a fire rating, or which is basically an hydrocarbon fire rating with a 30 minutes or a 60 minutes requirement. Morgan has got a solutions to cater to all these markets and all these applications there. In addition to this, we also have metros, underground metros, and also we have products for expansion joints, which is used in the buildings and also on the infrastructure projects. So these are some of the major sectors within the fire protection domain we are working on in this region.
And Ian, as global application manager, do you find that these vertical sectors differ globally? And also, how does the Middle East market differ in general from other global markets that you work in?
The reality is it doesn't. If you look globally at national building codes and regulations, and if you look at the international status of standards for testing and certification now, they are broadly similar. The major difference you see actually is between European-based codes and North American-based codes. So in that aspect, it isn't really any different. What you have here, though, is a much higher density of building and construction. And one of the comments to enhance on what Amar just said, when you're looking at mixed-use buildings and you're looking at the type of demographic of people using those buildings, different rules come into place. Because generally, if you're looking at an office space, people tend to be relatively younger, fitter, able to move faster. If you're looking at residential, you may have aged personnel, you may have children, young families, etc., that will take longer to evacuate a building. So your design ethos has to take into account those different types of demographics. And when you're looking at things like infrastructure, tunnels, for example, tunnels are essentially global. The only difference is the type of time temperature curve that you'll use to fire protect a tunnel. But predominantly nowadays, across most of the world, including North America, they're actually following European standards. So it's really rapid growth, high temperature, high intensity fire scenarios in tunnel applications. When you look at things like metro stations as well, there's a lot of interusability in terms of design standards that are used. Now, whether that's ASTM from North America or whether that's using the Euro codes out of Europe, there's a lot of commonality there. They may have a different number, they may have a different description, but essentially they're doing the same sort of thing. And one of the issues, is it really an issue? One of the issues we face is that when you look at an active system, such as a sprinkler alarm or something like that, it's all visible. Everyone can see it. Everyone more or less knows what it is. Passive fire protection, by its very nature, is hidden. If you go into a metro station, you're looking at nice cladded walls or tiled walls or something. People don't realise what's actually behind that substrate that is providing the fire resistance, performance, and everything else that is there. But I think, realistically, we nowadays operate in a global market. So in terms of products, in terms of testing, certification, in terms of standards, etc., it's pretty much the same. You do get the odd outstanding country, Australia, looking at you, who have a not invented here attitude, so have to redo everything. But generally, whether you're looking at marine, whether you're looking at petrochem, whether you're looking at general infrastructure, whether you're looking at building and construction, the requirements are pretty much similar.
Thank you, Ian. That's really comprehensive, actually, to understand the difference in the markets. And of course, Intersec Global brings together such an international community that it becomes a bit of a melting pot, actually, for all of these different regions and people who are working with different compliance and certifications.
One point I want to highlight here is when it comes to specific to Middle East, the regulators play a very critical and important role in regulating this market and ensuring that the codes, what they have put it in their books, are followed properly. See, the challenge what we have seen is the courts, even though civil defense has been insisting to the industry, we see that there is a bit of a deviation happening, or there is not enough understanding of what needs to be followed. As Morgan, as a responsible manufacturer, what we started doing is we started working along with civil defense, making them, explaining to them, saying that the codes are already there in their civil defense codes books. It's important that it is properly being, applied, or it is properly used by the stakeholders in the buildings there. So this is where we work and we consult along with the civil defense, and civil defense also understands that there is a gap in that understanding. So we, as a responsible manufacturer, like what Ian here normally talks about this, and to make a lot of clarity, he brings a clarity on what should be followed and what is written in the codes. How do you interpret that codes and ensure that we are following the right systems, and which is basically meeting the international standards, what is there for many years there. So this is what civil defense is looking at, and we as a responsible manufacturer are playing a small role in mitigating this gap so that we have a safer buildings all across UAE market and wider GCC market.
Wonderful. Well, it's been fantastic to get these insights from the two of you. So Ian, Amar, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. And I'm sure that our audience at home will feel encouraged now to find out more about Morgan Advanced Materials and, of course, the work that you're doing in insulation in a wide variety of construction with a wide variety of materials. So we look forward to seeing you at future events in the region. And Amar, I'm sure that as you're the regional manager for the Middle East, we'll catch up again very soon.
Absolutely.